Hey everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. I think it's the last one of the day before you get to go and do some more fun stuff in Vegas.
Before the party.
Yeah. Again, thank you for coming. I'm Michael Cade. I'm a field CTO, posh title in front of customers, technologist though. I've been at Veeam for 8.5 years. How many people are Veeam customers or know Veeam from the virtualization space? A lot of us, right? So our focus for the last 16 years has been around backup of data, recovery of that data as fast as we possibly can. And probably about 5 years ago, we started seeing a lot more data services being built into AWS, into the cloud. So what me and Julia came up with for this session was to take that 7 R's that you've seen from AWS, and Julia will go into that in a little bit more detail, but look at it from a 2023 point of view, 3 of the areas that we should be considering now as well as the additional 7. So Julia, I'm joined with Julia. Julia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here again. And my name is Julia. I'm a global technologist at Veeam. I'm also an AWS community builder, which means I'm very involved in AWS. My product specialty is Veeam Backup for AWS. So it's a pleasure to be here talking about AWS and migration, cloud, etc. Yeah. Do you want to add any? Can I start?
No.
Yeah. So we're going to talk today about data protection, cloud security. And before that, a lot of customers that we know, they're migrating to the cloud. So we wanted to start with the 7 R's. And before it used to be 6 R's in 2016. That's when AWS started with it. And then they added an extra R. And, but before thinking about migration, you have to think about a few things. You have to plan it before. So you have the discovery phase, which is, doing an inventory of everything that you have, all your data, your applications, your workloads. Then you assess and prioritize. What do you want to migrate first? What you don't want to migrate, what doesn't need to be migrated, and then you determine the migration path. And you can have more than one path for different apps. Several organizations, they use more than one migration path, and it's totally okay, but that's why it's important to have that, to plan it ahead and strategize first. So 2 of the R's that they are called migration R's, but are not really migration. One of them is retain, and the other one is retire. So retain is you have your applications on-prem, and you might want to move them in the future, but not now. Or you don't want to ever move them, but you want to still keep them. We call them sunset apps. So you retain them in your environment. You don't move them to AWS. Then the other one is called retire or decommission. Is you don't want that application anymore, you don't need that service, you can shut down the server, and then you don't want anything to do with it, and you terminate it. So these are 2 R's called migration R's as well, but not really migration.
Yeah, I think there's also this point just before discovery, which is the C-level exec saying, we need to go to cloud because cloud is cool. We've all probably had that conversation. And I think the other part there is not everything's fit for the cloud. Like we've probably got servers that have particular cards in or particular hardware that doesn't allow us to lift and shift that into the cloud. And that might be why we've got to keep it on premises or in our existing data center. Now, obviously, from a Veeam point of view, we have the ability to protect those workloads wherever they are, whether they're on premises, in virtualization, whether they're physical servers, all of that good stuff. From that retire point of view, it could also be that actually we don't need the operating system anymore. I'm just going to move that database. I'm just going to move that unstructured data into the public cloud as well that we're going to get into.
Yeah. So also in terms of retain, maybe for compliance reasons or security reasons, you can't move to the cloud. So you just stay where you are on premise, and that's okay. Like we said, there are different paths for different applications, different services. Then the next one is called relocate, or also called relocate, but it's mostly for VMware. So you're using VMware on-prem, you have VMs, and you don't want to have to learn everything about AWS, not right now, maybe in the future. You don't want to turn your VMs into EC2, having to create AMIs. You can, VMware has this joint solution with AWS, which is VMware on AWS, VMware Cloud on AWS. The name says it all. It's just move your VMs onto AWS, and you can still use those native VMware VMs on AWS without having to relearn everything. So you keep using them on AWS and then start benefiting from all the cloud benefits. And in the future, if you want to move to EC2, change them, that's fine. But that's how it works for this relocate.
Yeah, and I think once that happens, one is the skill shortage. I think everyone in the room, we're expected to know everything about everything at the moment in this IT world, and that's difficult. So we've probably spent a lot of our IT career already learning that VMware world, so let's transition and take that in. From a Veeam point of view, we work pretty much the same up there as well, so again, you don't have to go and relearn a different way in which to protect that as well. And I think that's a key differentiator, and then you can always start, because at that point you're now in the cloud. There's a lot of solution briefs around using VMware on AWS with native cloud tools such as RDS, such as DynamoDB, and hooking in and taking advantage of those cloud-based services up there as well.
So now the next one, rehosting, or also called lift and shift. This is the most common one that we see. It's basically, you lift your workloads from on-prem and you shift them onto AWS. So like we were saying, the VMs, you turn them into EC2s with AMIs, and you can automate that. You can use tools like Veeam to automate that, just moving your workloads, like it's a click of a button to move them onto AWS, or if you like to work, you can do that manually and move them to the cloud as well. But this is the most common that we see. And yeah, basically what the name says, lift and shift.
Yeah, and I think from a Veeam point of view, like I mentioned at the start, we focus on backup and recovery of data, regardless of whatever platform that is. And that's great, but we also play a huge part in that migration story. We have the ability to take any image-based backup and relocate that or migrate that into an EC2 instance. And as you go through that, there's a wizard driven, but there's also an API that you can take advantage of, is you go and choose, well, what type of EC2 instance, what security group, what VPC do I want them all to be in? And then we do the lift and shift. And the fact is we can store those backups in object storage, S3, in Amazon already, so that the law of physics isn't, we're not waiting for hours to push that data up if you're already doing that. There's a lot of portability and mobility of that data when it comes to rehosting. There's a lot
the
of
names
R's.
are confusing.
Yeah, there's a lot of R's to go through.
Yes, exactly. Next, replatform. So similar to lift and shift, but you want to add some enhancements, you want to upgrade the OS or the database. You also lift your workloads, you move to the cloud, but as you move, you add some enhancements. So this is the second most common case that we see. Also, you can use Veeam to do that automatically, and we see that it adds more benefits, because by moving to the cloud and adding these enhancements, you get more of the benefits from AWS as well.
Yeah, I think the most common one that we see here is around database servers. Maybe in years gone by, we would have had our database servers running in virtualization, running on physical machines, and now do we really want them in EC2 instances? Now, some DBAs, how many DBAs are in the room? Cool, right, I can't offend you then. I'll try not to offend you. But being able to lift and shift that into a PaaS-based service such as RDS, or like from an EFS point of view, let's take our unstructured data and let's offload some of that responsibility to AWS. And yes, you're going to pay a premium for it, but now I don't have to worry about keeping the operating system patched, updated, etc. So we're seeing a lot of that database migration, whether it's Postgres from a VM into RDS, or MySQL into RDS, but also Oracle and Microsoft SQL as well up there. So I think this is probably the more exciting way of migration path, just because it gets you into more of a, I can now spend time to actually enhance my application rather than worrying about patching and updating the operating system or keeping the lights on. Now, what goes against that from a DBA point of view is that maybe you lose a little bit of control of that database instance at that point, the tweaking of said parts of that database. But that's the way up that you have to decide on that. And again, from a migration point of view, because we're taking application-consistent image-based backups, we have the ability to be able to restore those databases in a consistent fashion back into wherever you need it to be. So that could be RDS. It could be from a stateful set in your Kubernetes cluster into RDS. It could be taking RDS and putting that into a stateful set to give you more control back around that Postgres database. Just all examples, and we just moving data is no easy feat. So that's where we come in to help provide that efficiency of moving that.
Yeah. Next, we have repurchase. So imagine you're using some sort of service on-prem, and you want to still use that on AWS. A lot of them, they have joint solutions with AWS, and sometimes you have to just buy a new license to use them on AWS. And it's, again, you lift those workloads and you move them to AWS with a new license, and you can still use those services on AWS. With Veeam, for instance, you don't have to buy a new license, so even if you move your workloads from on-prem or from another cloud provider to AWS, we have what's called a Veeam Universal License, so you can use the same license that you were using before on AWS. So it depends on the vendor, but it's all about like keeping what you were using on-prem or on another cloud provider, and when you move to AWS, you still have that same type of service.
Yeah, I think there's two trends that we're seeing out there in the field today, and one is lifting and shifting into SaaS-based models. So how can I really offload a lot of that control off to a Salesforce or off to a Microsoft 365 from a collaboration perspective? So really offloading that, but then also think about your service providers, your MSPs that are offering infrastructure as a service, but they're going to now look after everything for you rather than you having to spend time, again, patching, updating. And then extend that out to backup as a service. How can we offer, how can these MSPs take that responsibility of that data, and you pay a recurring subscription to be able to look after that workload?
Yeah. And then the last one is called refactoring. It's the most cumbersome one, but the one that you get the most benefit from, because you totally revamp your application. So you re-architect it to be cloud native. Everything that you had before, you change everything from the back-end environment, the architecture, the infrastructure, to be cloud native, so using AWS services. And you get the benefits directly right after you migrate to the cloud. I think this one we see companies doing, but it takes more time to migrate because you need to have the experience, you need to understand how the other services work to set them up for success so they can work well on AWS. Because what works on-prem sometimes doesn't work on AWS.
So I think most of us in the room will have remembered that physical to virtual type migration that happened. There is no physical or virtual migration into containerization or into serverless functions or step functions. So this is why we've got that challenge. There's no P2V converter from that perspective. And that's why I think there's no easy button, which means we haven't had that compelling reason to get into that containerized environment. How many people are running some sort of Kubernetes containers in their environments?
Oh.
Yeah, so not many of us, but some, again, from last year's session, where we saw probably half the hands go up less than what we just saw. And I think, obviously, whether you're using serverless, whether you're using containers, whether you're using Kubernetes or any cloud-native service, there's still going to be some data attached to that somewhere, whether that's RDS, whether that's a virtual machine database or a data service, some observability metrics that we need to keep for regulation. There's still going to be some sort of data somewhere that we need to protect. I think if you get the chance, if you're still here, if the show floor's still open, there's an awesome stand from the AWS guys called Serverless Land. They're the guys that have, they've got the coffee machine. You log into it and you order on your phone, and then it goes through a step function to get you that. What I mean is that's still using a DynamoDB at the back end. That's important data. It doesn't matter whether we get into cloud native or whether we stay around virtual machines, EC2 instances. We still need to think about how we protect that workload, and that's some of the stuff that we'll get onto.
Yeah. And just so you have an idea of how complex it can be, I like to compare these as you're trying to change the operating system, the seats, everything from an airplane, while the airplane is on air, fully loaded with passengers. So your application is still working, and it needs to be in the best state, and you try to migrate it to the cloud. So it can be hard, but sometimes it has the benefits from being fully cloud native. And before I move on, there are three last steps after you migrate to the cloud, which is validation. So testing everything to make sure it's working on AWS, then transitioning, and then you can move it to production and just monitor, make sure everything is working fine. Sometimes that's not the easiest part.
Yeah, the diagram looks very easy, right? And because also I think what we see is maybe we did relocate or rehost, but then we look to refactor or repurchase as well. So there's we didn't have enough slide room to be able to put everything on, because this is a continuous effort to be able to keep evolving with all of the new stuff that, like the new 50 new services that AWS brings out a year. Well, let's take advantage of that and use that. But so it's always going to be a progression, whereas I think we come from a world where we build a physical server, we give it a name, hopefully it's not something from The Simpsons or something like that, but then we progress into virtualization, we start using things like infrastructure as code, we start using configuration management, and we don't really care about what that name is, and we don't care how long it lives, as long as it serves its purpose, scales up, scales down accordingly, but we're going to have that continued focus on evolving and using the services available for the job in hand.
Yeah. Now, great. You're on the cloud. What's next? From a security in the cloud and a data protection point of view, there are a lot of different things on AWS, on the cloud, that are different from on-prem that I mentioned. And at Veeam, we love talking about data. We protect data. Data is our main focus, and we run some reports every year. So we have a ransomware report, data protection strand report, etc. And we've seen that companies are getting attacked by ransomware attacks more than ever. So last year, we ran this research, and we saw that 85% of it was almost 2,000 companies that were part of this study, were victims of ransomware attack. And they were victims more than 2 times. So now it's not a question of if or when, it's a question of how many times are you gonna get attacked by ransomware or another cyber attack. And what else we've seen? We've seen that these attacks are becoming more common, more sophisticated, and the attackers are targeting backups, the backup storage, because they know that's where the treasure lies. So we have to, it's a job that we all have to do together against these attackers and work together. So that's why we're all here in this room to talk about data protection, because it's very important, to find out more about these tools that we can use to become stronger against them. So do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so the other thing, so obviously ransomware, cybersecurity is a massive threat and very topical. You saw the show floor, it's full of security vendors doing the good stuff, left of bang, the bang being the bad thing that happens, and they're doing that preventative way in which they want to fix that, right of bang being more us about remediation. but I think it's also accidental deletion. How many people in the room have made a mistake and deleted a file, an email, dropped a database?
Yeah.
I've done that as well. So we all make mistakes as well, and ransomware might be the top one from that report, but accidental deletion is not far behind it for those that would actually admit to it as well. But I'm pretty confident that all of us in this room have made a mistake at one point, whether it in IT or just in general as well. But let's get on to the 3 new R's that me and Julia
with that we came up with 3 new R's, which is responsibility, resiliency, and recovery. So for us, you move to the cloud, comes more modernization and all the good things, but you need to think about these 3 new R's. So starting with responsibility, who knows here about the shared responsibility model with AWS? Okay, not everyone, and this is what I see when talking to people in the community, is that a lot of people, they don't know that there is a shared responsibility model with AWS, and also all the other cloud providers. This is on their website. This is on AWS's website, and what does it say? It says that the responsibility for the security and the resiliency of the cloud is AWS's. So they are going to take care of all the infrastructure and the high availability, those 11 nines, it's up to them. But the security in the cloud and the availability, the resiliency in the cloud is your responsibility. So all the data, the applications, everything that you put on the cloud is your responsibility. So if ever something happens with your data, applications, workloads, it's your responsibility. They're not going to do anything for you. And people, they don't know that. They move to the cloud. They think, OK, now I can forget about it. Let me do something else. No, they need to keep managing it and taking care of it and monitoring it. We're going to talk about the things that should be done. But
so this is my fourth or fifth AWS reInvent, and I think I've shown this slide every single time. But it's fantastic to see the amount of people putting their hands up and have that awareness that that data is yours. Whether it's your data to, like, when you drop that database, there's no one to ring. Maybe it's the DBA or maybe it's the backup team, but it's your responsibility. AWS are not going to bring that back for you. And they clearly put that. This is from their site, and they will they absolutely agree with what they're doing. They're going to keep you up and running. They're going to keep the services there, but that data is your responsibility.
Yeah. So now talking about resiliency. Resiliency, it means you need to be able to keep running, and in case of, if anything happens, you need to be able to get back up and running as fast as you can. So resiliency, I don't know if you probably all know about the well-architected framework. It has a few pillars, and one of the pillars is reliability. And inside reliability comes resiliency. So resiliency is a very important part of one of the best practices when architecting on AWS, and it means that you need to have the capability of recovering if anything happens, a malicious attack or accidental deletion, anything. So this is important, and there are a few things that you can do to be more resilient on AWS. Starting with the 3-2-1 rule. This 3-2-1 rule is a backup best practice that says that you need 3 copies of your data. So one of the copies is your production copy, your production data, and 2 extra copies to avoid a single point of failure. In 2 different types of storage of medias. So it can be one snapshot on EBS and one on S3, Amazon S3. And one of them needs to be off-site. So I can show you here, this is a diagram, and it's basically this. So you have an RDS instance, an EC2 instance, and then you have the copy, the snapshot of each. Then you save them onto S3 object storage, and you send them off-site to, you can use zero replication, send them to another region, or even better, send them to a local storage on-prem, or send them to another cloud provider. So this is important, 3-2-1, don't forget, 3-2-1 backup rule.
And I think the one thing to add here is where Veeam sits in the public cloud from a marketplace deployment where we come in to protect that. In this instance here, we have different regions, different VPCs. This could be across different accounts for even more resilience. And I think the important thing to note is that resilience isn't the same as availability. Amazon have some fantastic features and functionality across their products that provide high availability of databases across different regions, all of that good stuff, and absolutely take advantage of that, because that's your front end, that's your mission critical data. But if you make a bad mistake, or bad things happen, mistakes were made, you're going to replicate that bad thing to that other site, that other region, that availability zone. So where we're coming in is providing that resiliency across accounts, across permissions, IAM, and as well as across all of your application. That backup is how we get you back up and running as fast as possible when those bad things happen.
Now, imagine if you have everything in one account, your production data, your applications running, and also all your backup. If ever, unfortunately, something happens, a malicious actor gets in your account, the probability that they will be able to encrypt or delete or corrupt your data is almost 100%. That's why we also have this notion of logical air gap, that you need to separate those accounts, that data. So have one account for your production data and one account for your backup data. And here we have also another diagram showing, again, that same 3-2-1, 3 copies, two medias and 1 offsite, and also having that logical air gap in another account as well. So your backup should reside in another account.
Yeah, it's just all about privilege. Everyone could put everything in one AWS subscription, but how's that? That's not going to give you that reliability. It's not going to give you the resilience against an attack on that account. So yes, we can have MFA, we can have all of the security credentials and stopping blocks to get us into our AWS management console, CLI, etc. However you integrate or interact with your AWS account, but there's still a chance that we could fall foul of some malicious activity. And it might not actually be an external threat. Imagine someone within your business actually becomes the malicious actor within there as well and has access to some of it, exactly that.
Yeah. Then, and again, continuing resilient, how you can be more resilient comes immutability. So imagine you have your 2 separate accounts and then a malicious actor, it can be external or internal, gets into your backup account. If your data is immutable, they won't be able to do anything with that data. So by turning your storage, your backup immutable, you put that in a warm state, which means write once, read many. You put in there, and then no one can touch it. No one can delete it, no one can modify it, no one can encrypt it, not even the root account. For the period of time that you set it to be immutable, no one can touch it. So it's another prevention against all these attacks. And you can do that very easily. Amazon S3 has the S3 object lock, and we use it. We use the API at Veeam, so it's just a checkbox. When you're doing your backup, you want to turn them immutable, you just check that box, and it becomes immutable for the period of time that you choose. And it's another layer of protection against all these attacks.
I think I'll mention something on the next slide.
Yeah,
because as much as, so this is, everything here is on AWS, but realistically, we're probably still running other services somewhere else as well. So being able to send our virtual machine or our physical backup, our physical servers also into that same S3 bucket with that immutability lock, with that object lock API, and the versioning enabled on that are Kubernetes backups that might be in Red Hat OpenShift, might be in Rosa, might be in EKS, but they also might be in another, they might be on premises. I want to be able to send all of them into that off-site location to provide that resilience against something bad happening in that, whatever that source location may be. And that could be our collaboration tools, our SaaS-based workloads as well, such as Microsoft Backup, Microsoft 365 as well.
And with that, we've came up with a new rule, a more enhanced rule than that 3-2-1 that I've told you about, which is the 3-2-1-1-0. So besides the 3-2-1 that we already talked about, there is this extra one, which means your data, your copy should be offline, air-gapped, or immutable, one of those other things that I just mentioned. And the 0, we're going to talk about in a few slides, but it shouldn't have any errors. So you should be testing your backups to make sure that it's not corrupted, that it's the right data that you want to, if eventually you want to back up, it's the right data from the right period of time, because sometimes, again, we see people, they don't test the backup, and then comes the time when you need that backup, and it's not the right file, it's corrupted. So again, testing, and also with Veeam, we have an automated testing that Michael will talk about after.
Yeah, I always think this looks like a zip code, but the 3-2-1 rule, and that's not something that Veeam brought up. Think of that as a methodology. I mean, if everyone in the room or anyone watching the video takes anything away from this whole session, that 3-2-1 rule, that 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types and one of them being off-site, just if you can implement that, then you're going to save yourself when bad things happen. The one, like Julia said, making sure that that is in that immutable fashion, in that object lock S3 bucket, in a different location off-site, and then making sure that you test it. Now, we have automated ways in which we can help test those backups as well within, like you'll hear us talk about Sure Backup and other Sure Replica as well as other tools that we have within the Veeam suite. But we probably won't have time to get into all of that today.
Yeah.
So that then leads us on to, obviously we're focused on moving data from A to B, wherever that's and we're pretty good at it, right? In terms of compression, dedupe, space savings, cost efficiency, all of that good stuff. The other thing that we're mainly focused on though, is how fast we can recover that data. But we are a backup company. Like, I don't want to pretend that we're a security company one little bit. Yes, are we involved in the security of data and providing that capability, that resilience of that? Absolutely. And we just announced a couple of weeks ago integrations into security vendors like Sophos, for example. But equally around other like key management services that are going to provide or allow us to provide KMS type solutions within our product as well. Again, that kind of goes back to our swim lane is about backup recovery, as well as that mobility of data as well, that freedom of data and how quick we can recover that. And you can factor in disaster recovery to it as well. But we're not going to create our own key management system. There's a lot out there. AWS have a pretty good one. So let's integrate with that, and we can take advantage of that from an encryption point of view, again, when it comes to our backups. So not only are we storing those backups in a dedupe compression fashion, we're also going to stick an encryption on all of that, our own encryption. What is it that Rick says?
If you don't encrypt your backup, someone else will.
But leveraging best-of-breed tools to be able to provide that is a key part that we should be thinking about as well over that whole 7 hours that me and Julia covered. We have to be thinking about the safety of that data.
And here's a diagram, so you can see, again, the EC2, the RDS, and using AWS KMS for those encryption keys. And also, don't forget to always rotate those keys, because just leaving them there and forgetting about them, it's not the way to go about it. You also have to take care of it, so rotate the keys and use those services.
Yeah, which then brings us on to the principle of, the principle of least privilege. So making sure, let's not use domain admins like we maybe did 10, 15 years.
Root account for everything, for everyone.
Yeah, let's be really granular about what that IAM permission needs to. It's very easy to go *** in an IAM policy. I have done it, but you shouldn't. But granular IAM permission. So everything that we do from a Veeam backup perspective, whether it be I'm going to use an S3 bucket okay, I'm going to create an IAM policy and a user for that, and I'm only going to give them the ability to do X, Y, Z, whatever that needs to be up there. I'm going to do it on a service-by-service basis. We should not have a backup IAM role that allows us to do backups, recovery, snapshots, deletions. That's going to end badly across all of our different services in AWS. Let's have one for each one, because we want to be able to provide that least privilege, and we integrate into that IAM. We use that IAM to be able to make sure that we have the permission to do it. And as we go through the wizard, you'll hopefully see that we hit that check permissions, and it says, yes, you're all good. You have all the IAM access that you need. So we want to work with that. We don't want to take away. We definitely don't want to open up the door or leave the key in the door so everyone can come in.
Yeah, and not only the IAM roles, but also implementing RBAC. So depending on the role, have just the permissions for their role, and no more, no less. Also implementing MFA. MFA is the basic of the basic to have implemented. And we have RBAC for all our services, depending if you're just doing the backup or if you're doing something else. MFA as well. So all those are part of the principle of least privilege, which is where the zero trust security stems from, right?
Exactly that. And then that brings us on to the final R, and I feel like I've already said it about 25 times, is around recovery. How do we get that data back when bad things happen? And do I just need to bring back several virtual machines, several databases, or do I just need to bring back individual files, individual parts of a database? And that's really our key focus there from a recovery point of view. And then how do we test that? How do we ensure that those backups are in a good state? I'm not going to read all of the words on there, but I want to make sure that the database is being backed up correctly.
Which is that 0 from the 32110. Mm-hmm.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I want to make sure that that VM or that EC2 instance actually fires up and actually serves the data that I need in an isolated security group and VPC, so it's not affecting our production environments.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, we want to make sure. We want to make sure that we can also do that in an automatic fashion. Because if every time that something happens, you have to go there manually, restore, recover, it's going to take you a lot of time, and you don't want that. So automating as much as you can to save you time, that's what we want as well with Veeam. And just when you're moving to the AWS, because a lot of companies move to the cloud because they want to save that productivity. They don't want to do that undifferentiated heavy lifting. So automating as much as you can is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when Veeam first came out 16 years ago, focused around virtualization backup, APIs weren't they were very much closed APIs that we were talking to and exposing. When it comes to Veeam backup for AWS, and even Veeam backup and replication now, is that we have an extensible data platform that allows you to not be in the UI. Like, let's put it into those automation tools. Let's use and integrate into Terraform. We have Terraform scripts that will allow you to use infrastructure as code to spin up your Veeam backup for AWS and create policies based on that. And if you've got X amount of sites and accounts, that makes life a lot easier to be able to automate that away so that you don't have to worry about it, but also bring it into other systems and automate some of those tasks away as well. And then another thing, again, I've touched on this, what does granularity look like? Veeam wants to be the most efficient possible, whether it's a cost efficiency or whether it's a time efficiency. When it comes to recovering workloads, I don't want to force you to have to bring back all of those VMs, sorry, EC2 instances.
Or the whole instance.
I don't want you to have to bring everything back, especially if you only need one folder from an EFS share. I want to make sure that you can dive in and take one individual file and bring that back in. And again, especially when it comes to S3, the way in which we store those backup files, those backup folders, we're only going to bring back what you need, whether that's on-prem or whether it's in the public cloud as well, because we still have to think about the egress charges that we're going to get hit with when we're taking data out of AWS, even from S3, even from backups. And then another thing that we've been constantly evolving with is this ability around high-speed recovery. So we coined and patented instant VM recovery back again, probably 13 years ago now. And that's the ability to bring up a machine back in 2 seconds. Yeah. And we have the ability to do the direct restore to EC2. We have the ability to bring that back as fast as possible. We have our Veeam Explorers that allow us to dive into application suites and bring out individual tables or individual files again, and from point in time. So high-speed recovery kind of goes hand in hand with that granularity. And if I can recover something really quick, then I haven't wasted time, I haven't wasted resources, I can bring it all back and be back up and running as fast as possible. Yeah.
Because the more your application is offline, not working, the more money you're losing. So we want to help you so it doesn't happen to you. So yeah.
So last 20 minutes of the session, we've got a few demos that we want to run through as well. But it'd be remiss not to talk about some of the key areas, some of the key innovations that we've brought out from a Veeam perspective, and that is the ability to back up your Amazon S3 buckets. So we're seeing a lot more production workloads leverage your Amazon S3 buckets. Mm-hmm. So being able to protect them in the same way that we protect unstructured data, NAS, EFS, for example, and be granular about that recovery. We're seeing a lot of content delivery networks, and I'll get onto a little secret project of mine in a bit that allows me to demo this. But also Amazon DynamoDB, heard a lot from them, especially around, and I swore I wouldn't say anything about AI, so that's the only time I'm going to mention it. But if we think about serverless and we think about how we generate, or what we use data for, is we store stuff in databases. DynamoDB is a great way in which we can store those serverless functions and push that data into DynamoDB. We already have the ability to do that from an RDS point of view. That's Aurora, MySQL, and Postgres. But in this new version, it's the ability to offload that into an immutable S3 bucket as well. And then also, again, just enhancing that granular permission that we've been talking about. So let's get into some demos. So firstly, DynamoDB backup. Now I could just show you the interface and we could walk around that if we go straight in. So this is just a very simple web front end. Sorry for the brightness, I didn't realize that was going to light up the room like that. But basically I have a DynamoDB table, and you can see that I have some important data, just some random data that I can add in there. Can you click again, yeah, Julia? So that's reflecting on a DynamoDB table. We can add in AWS reInvent, what the product name is. Ultimately, I'm just storing some data in DynamoDB to show you how we can get stuff back after that. So let's place that order. Let's make sure we don't hit one of those red buttons, because especially before I've taken a backup. So okay, I've added that in there. You'll see some other funny inputs in there if you were able to look. I have my DynamoDB table already in, and you can see, yeah, that should tally to what you saw on the front-end web page. And yeah, you can see that we've added in our new data. Now, within Veeam Backup for AWS, you can see that we have our simple UI, EC2, RDS, VPC, EFS, and now DynamoDB. We've created a policy already that allows us to protect that workload. You can see down here that we have a table called order table, which reflects to what we have in the DynamoDB instance. And I've just clicked to go, let's start that backup. I've sped this up, but it actually doesn't take very long. You can imagine 20 rows of data in a DynamoDB database doesn't take up that much that room or time. So backup complete. So that new item that I just put in. So now let's simulate a failure. And again, I'm in a different account. So this is in a backup account, and I'm connected to my production environment where my DynamoDB is. Now, if I go and cause that failure scenario by hitting that big red button that says I'm going to clear the DynamoDB, shocking, guess what it did? It removed everything from that. So a very simple failure scenario. But ultimately, I now need that mission-critical data back, so I'm going to head back into Veeam Backup for AWS. I'm simply going to find the resource that I want to restore. Not in RDS, don't do that, yeah. I'm going to find the job, the policy that I created. I'm going to find the restore points that I have, and I'm going to choose that. You can see here that I have one. I've picked that. Restore point, I could have clicked that. What IAM role has the rights to get me back into that other AWS account, so I've done that. And then what can't be restored? So the following tables cannot be restored because, because the table's still there. I haven't removed that. I was just maliciously hacked or some sort of thing just got rid of it. So I need to actually remove this, confirm, because it might have not been a full breach. It might not have been a full encryption. We might have just deleted a few lines of the table. So I need to go through what that process is. But we're not also here on that last page, I was able to restore to the original location or to another DynamoDB table. So that's where that migration piece could come in, but also the ability to leverage that data. How could I give that DynamoDB table to someone else to be able to take advantage of? And I speed through this very quickly, and then we'll go and refresh our application, and hopefully you'll see, I know you'll see, the 20 inputs of the database. So a very simple demo just to show what we started with, good data, added some data, caused a failure, and then we recovered from that. So yeah, in there, and then if I refresh this page, that should do the same. Okay, all back and running. The second demo that I wanted to show was that S3 backup. Now, S3 backup, I decided that I was going to create something called Veeam Flix. I hope I don't get in trouble for that, but here we go. And basically, it's a content delivery network that's going to store all the demos that I've been creating in an S3 bucket, but it's going to expose them in a very simple web format. The admission here is that I'm not a developer. I'm definitely not a UI developer. If we go to it, Julia. So within my S3 bucket, this is actually a follow-on from that last demo where I'm also storing all of that data into an S3 bucket as well. So these are orders. So within Veeam Backup Replication, we have the ability to send our S3 backups to a local disk. That could be a dedupe device. That could be for regulation. That could be a different location. And then we also have the object storage to object storage. Now, let's say maybe I've used another object storage option that maybe that is not in the cloud that we're here for the event, and maybe I want to get into the cloud here. I want to get into Amazon S3. So we can get granular. We can restore those individual files and get all of those back up and running. And then what I'm going to do is we've got the ability to back up S3 compatible storage or other object storage options as well. It's quite difficult when you're being recorded to not mention other areas. And here's Veeam Flix. So I've got, a couple of demos on there. If we click on them, then obviously just to prove it is data. There are demos in there. Okay, good stuff. But maybe you see where they were. No, I don't know if I show it. But they're on a different location. They're in another S3 compatible storage. They're not in my AWS account right now. So I have a couple of backups. You can see here I have 2 backups, and I can restore the entire bucket. I can be granular about what I recover, or I can restore to a different location as well. So we load our restore points and the options that we have. Here you get to see we can choose our points. We've got a slider to see what happened. I actually took the first backup as we were uploading those videos, so you see the change in the amount of videos that we had. Now, where do you want to restore it to? The original location, because it's a restore scenario, or do you want to migrate it to your new shiny AWS or Amazon S3 bucket that we've created called Reinvent Restore? And that's where I want to go. So click Next. That validates that. Now, what do you want to do? Do you want to skip restoring? Do you want to replace older objects? What do you want to do with that? So we give it some options about what it should look like, and then we start that restore function into our new shiny Amazon S3 bucket as a migration. Now, I've shown you, hopefully you've seen from a recovery point of view. Now, I'm going to go into my app, and now I'm going to point it to my new Amazon S3 bucket. So I've moved my whole CDN through one backup job and restore into a new one in a matter of seconds. Granted, there's only 5 videos, so it wouldn't take very long, but the concept is that we can help you move that data as well as restore it. Notice the clicked hyperlink. Yeah, it's a different hyperlink. It just changed to blue if you even saw that. Whereas history. But now if you look up in the top corner, you can see that we're now going to that reinvent, restore S3 bucket. You can see the content of that. And I think that leaves you 10 minutes to talk about
No worries, yeah,
VPCs.
I don't need it. Can I?
Yeah, just
yeah? Okay, so this is not a new feature. We've had it for a while already, but customers love it because it's still not existing on AWS, which is the VPC configuration backup. Veeam Backup for AWS comes with a pre-configured VPC backup policy that I'm going to show you on the demo, and you can just enable it, and it will take all backup from all your VPCs from the regions that you select automatically, or you can also select manually from which regions and which VPCs configurations you want. But let me show you here on this demo. So you're going to see on the UI, it still doesn't have Dynamo on the top, because we just released the Dynamo feature, the DynamoDB feature. But here the policy, I just enabled the policy and it's been running for a few days already and everything was a success. And then I go to the protected data, to the VPC, and I'm going to show you everything that we're protecting. So we're protecting Internet Gateway, the all route table, everything that's on the VPC, subnet, and even the VPCs. We protect everything and we back them up. Now I'm going to my Amazon account and I'm going to delete some things. So if you see here, it says this VPC will be deleted permanently and cannot be recovered later. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm also going to delete a few other things. Let's see what else. The endpoint, I'm going to delete the endpoint as well. I know I ended up cutting because it was a long demo. I deleted a security group. I'm going back to endpoints, and I'm going to delete it as well. And again, it will tell us that if we delete it, we cannot recover it later. So AWS tells us that. But obviously, with Veeam, we'll be able to recover. So now let's go back to Veeam Backup for AWS, and we're going to run our policy again so we can get all the changes. It's very fast as well. It's running. Let's wait for it to be a success. And there you can see the changes. It tells us already what changes have been made. So if an employee deletes by mistake or not by mistake, you'll be able to see there. And there on the protected data, it tells us that it was deleted. So on the top, you have that button compare. You can click on there, or you can filter by just the deleted configurations on the VPC, or on the backup policy. Then if we want to restore, we can restore an entire VPC or some selected items, some configuration items. Here I'm going to select the restore point, the one right before the deletion, the one that I just made. And here I'm going to select the items that I want to restore. So I'm going to go there, click, and I'm going to select the VPC that I had deleted. And I'm going to add to my restore list. I'm going to just apply, and then I'm going to add more, yes, the project VPC the endpoint that I deleted. I also had deleted a security group that wasn't on the video, but I'm also going to add that.
Yeah, this is kind of like a shopping list of the things that you've just
seen. And like we said, very granular. You can select what you want. And there is the IAM role. Here I'm using just the default, but you should be using the one just with the permissions. You can also test to see if the IAM role that you select has all the permissions. Here just you can add a reason, summary, and finish. Now let's wait. Should have worked. We'll go back to the Amazon account, to the AWS account. And let's go to our VPC. We'll refresh, and we'll find that everything is back there. So what I had deleted, the endpoint, the security group as well, everything is there. And that's the beauty of the Veeam backup for AWS. It's very easy. So I really like this feature. And now we have 5 minutes, but wrapping it up.
Yeah, I think skip over these ones, Julia, and then we can. So I think the whole premise of it was obviously to give you an update around what Veeam are doing from a cloud perspective. I didn't really touch on any of the cloud native stuff around casting K10 and specifically around Kubernetes backup. But if you're interested in speaking to us about that, then more than happy to have that conversation now or another time. But I think the important part to us is, yes, we are focused on backup and recovery. We're very much involved in that data security type story and very much around disaster recovery. Bad things happen. They happen daily. They don't always make the news. And it's about how we get stuff back. The reason why we wanted to show that VPC is because it's so easy to make changes or things change for you in your AWS account. So being able to see those routing tables and be able to restore them between each backup and restore point and be so granular, that's potentially saving some companies. So I think.
Yeah, with that, we appreciate you being here. You can also reach out to us. Our social medias are there. We're going to be here for a little while for questions. I know we're almost running out of time, but yeah.
So I think the other thing, the big ask for us is, so as a sponsor of reInvent, and we get to do these sessions, we'd love to know feedback. Like, was that useful? The right blend of, I'm sure you've all seen so many slides this week in sessions.
Yeah.
So we try and put a lot of demos in there. Do we need more demos? Do we need to be more technical? I don't think we get the chance to say whether it's level 100, 300, etc. Yeah, in the survey, you can give us that feedback because that allows us to define what we do next year when we come back. And we'll listen to that. That's the best bit of feedback that we can get from that. Yeah. But yeah, I think with that, Julia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
And thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy the party tonight.
Yeah.